Well, today we bring together two leading voices for an in-depth discussions. We're joined from Washington by Ms. Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and political analyst known for her sharp insights on U.S. foreign policy. And from Cairo, Mr. Ahmed Sultan, a researcher in regional security and terrorism. Good afternoon to you both, and welcome to Think Tank. Let me start here with Ms. Ginger. And Ms. Ginger, President Trump remains adamant that the strikes completely destroys Iran's nuclear program. Now, how do you interpret this confidence in light of the classified U.S. intelligence suggesting only limited damage?
Yes. Well, first, thank you, Mona, for having us today, and greetings to your viewers and your other guests. And one of the things we have seen from Trump and Secretary of Defense press conferences is that Trump is adamant that as soon as we dropped those bunker buster bombs on Fordo, that we completely obliterated their nuclear facilities. And the reason they are so angry and defiant when there may be evidence to the contrary is because right now Trump really needs for those nuclear facilities to be obliterated. This is because he found himself trapped by Netanyahu's actions, by their unprovoked strike on Iran. Then, of course, as everyone predicted, Netanyahu and Israel says, United States, you need to help us. We can't hold out much longer. So Trump had to take action. And we did see that it was going to be the nuclear facilities when he, at his press conference, disavowed Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of intelligence, and said, no, she's wrong. They have nuclear facilities. We need to bomb them. And this is because this is his out to not have to bomb Iran. If the nuclear facilities are indeed destroyed, then Trump can move on. Now, we know and of course, our media in America, as well as Democrats and many Republicans, are very angry that we even struck Iran in the first place because of the great risk of being drawn into another 20-year war. So there has been resistance to Trump saying that the sites are obliterated because the American people, many American people, are angry that we did strike. However, if the nuclear facilities are obliterated, then Trump can move on to the next step of negotiations with Iran. And indeed, what some military analysts are saying is that Israel's strike on Iran may have been their Pearl Harbor from the Japanese point of view, because, as Yamamoto said after he struck Pearl Harbor, it was a tactical success, but it was a strategic disaster. And this is because, as a result, we have seen first, Iran has proven to be a much more formidable defense, and Israel has shown themselves to be weaker than anticipated. And the consequences, now Iran is evicting the IAEA because of their collaboration with Israel. Iran may withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And what we are seeing the results on Israel is they suffered great damage. And more importantly, their approval, their poll numbers are dropping. And now polls are showing that more people are opposed to Israel and no longer want to support Israel. So it looks like the result of this was that Iran suffered physical damage, but did not suffer spiritual damage because they regrouped. But Israel has suffered physical and spiritual damage as a result of this. And this leaves the situation more dangerous, yet with more possibility of moving forward with Iran.
All right. Mr. Sultan, how important is the ongoing battle of narratives between Washington, Tehran, and European capitals for regional public opinion? And what do you have on their narratives, each and every one of them?
Greetings to you and to the guest from Washington. Of course, for the battle of narratives, it's part of the current confrontation. It's untraditional war, and the basic part of which is to maintain narratives. Now, the United States or the president says that he completely destroyed the nuclear Iranian project, and if Iran tries to rebuild it, they will face more destruction. And the Iranian claim victory as well, that this campaign led by the United States and Israel failed. But in fact, we are witnessing this very fragile truth that can be broken any time, and I expect that to happen. We are still facing a real challenge regarding a treaty or an agreement regarding the uranium enrichment in Iran. It's a very critical moment, and according to last experiences, targeting nuclear facilities is a motive to actually establish a nuclear weapon. We have seen this before when Israel bombed the Iraqi nuclear reactor, and this did not contain the ambitions of Saddam Hussein to actually obtain a nuclear weapon, because he found it as the only deterrence against Israel and US to target him. And if it weren't for the second Gulf War and the Kuwait invasion, he would have been able to go further with his objectives. Iran is working on the same directions because they were already engaged in the IAEA inspection efforts. They did not break the treaty, and increasing the enrichment percentage happened when Trump withdrew from the nuclear agreement. Iran was not committed to any agreement back then, and at the same time Europe was engaged, and they tried to reach an agreement with Iran, but eventually the European stance is always following the United States, and without a real agreement with the US administration there will be no agreement. So the current the status quo is very confusing. Everyone is trying to maintain their own narratives, and everyone is seeking to achieve their own goal, and it's a real strategic dilemma which will lead to one of either ways, either an agreement, an urgent agreement to get out of this dilemma, or to renew the battle and the war and the confrontation once again, and more escalation in the region, which will eventually reflect negatively on the entire region, not only Iran and Israel. It's a very fragile region, and the security arrangements of the past have fallen, and this might lead to further failure and more conflict if there is no wisdom in handling this.
What Ms. Ginger, the Defense Secretary and the CIA both insisted that facilities in Iran were destroyed or severely damaged. Now, are there a kind of political motivations behind the administration's portrayal of the operation as a total success?
Yes. Well, one of the things that Trump should have done after the bombing was to say to the American public and the world, we have just struck the facilities. We do not know the extent of the damage yet. We have to wait for assessments, and then we will know more. But Trump being Trump, he could not make a reasonable statement. He had to immediately boast. We completely obliterated. But what we have seen since his statements is that we've had analysts going over satellite images, going over photographs, trying to assess the damage, and now talking about, well, where are the 800 kilograms of enriched uranium?
Exactly.
So,
if I may ask you here about the first assessments that were made by military intelligence, And this the assessments that were made later by the Secretary of Defense Hectas and the CIA and what does this tell?
Well, one thing that was evident from the press conference that Pete Hegseth had with the CIA official was that Hegseth said, we have evidence, we know the sites are damaged, and then he calls the CIA official, General Kane, to verify this. However, they both work for Donald Trump. So they're both going to say what Trump wants to hear, which is that we completely obliterated Fordo. However, as we've seen, as more analysts are chiming in, and as we're looking at the satellite photos and analyzing granite, steel, concrete, the this is something that America is going to argue about for quite some time. And this is because it has become a political situation. Everything Trump has campaigned on, bringing peace, starting no new wars, having a legacy of peace, wanting a Nobel Prize for peace, all of this is on the line, and this is a weakness for Trump and the opposing side. His political opponents sense this weakness, and they are going in to attack here at this point. However, this is going to be inconclusive. We may never know the damage to Fordo because we have closed off Iranian communications in this regard. Indeed, Trump wants to resume negotiations, and the Iranian leaders are rightfully reluctant because we've used negotiations as a cover for sneak attacks, surprise attacks, which is a new development in our war doctrine. This is an alarming development to military analysts. But getting back to Fordo, these nuclear facilities have been planned, well designed, and thought out. And we knew going in that our bunker busters would be inadequate to reach those depths, which is why we sent 6 B Spirit bombers with 2 bombs, 2 payloads each. And we were hoping that perhaps 6 could travel 6 times the depth that 1 could travel rather than just leaving a 6 times larger crater. So we will not know the extent of the damage unless Iran actually reveals more information, which they understandably will not do. And in fact, we've seen this has just strengthened relations between China and Russia even further. So Trump's political opponents are going to keep arguing over Fordo and the damage as a way to attack Trump's weakness. Trump is going to try to move on towards further negotiations. And indeed, the wild card here is Israel. We have seen that they have resumed bombing in southern Lebanon. We see that this entire time they have used the strikes in Iran as a distraction from the genocide in Gaza, the killings at the humanitarian food stations, and furthering the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. So while everyone has been focused on Iran, the situation in Palestine has grown worse, and there are now renewed bombings in Lebanon. So we are entering a very dangerous period with Israel. One thing further, Israel, we said this was about the nuclear weapons. This really appeared to be about regime change. However, we are seeing the people are rallying around the leaders of Iran more than ever, and we are seeing Israel is weaker than ever. I believe if there is a regime change here, it is going to be Benjamin Netanyahu. It will be a regime change in Israel as opposed to Iran, based on the way things are going at this time.
Well, you just pointed your finger on a very important difference between the prospects of the United States and Israel towards the issue. We'll get back to you, Ms. Chapman, about this. Let me go here to Mrs. Sultan. And Mrs. Sultan, the abouts of the uranium, or the enriched uranium, as Ms. Chapman said, and how significant is it that Iran enriched uranium, or highly enriched uranium stockpile, was reportedly moved before the strikes, according to the European intelligence?
In fact, these reports have political dimensions, and everything being said and stated at the moment is related to politics. What has been stated by President Trump and Defense Secretary Hicks, that the nuclear project was completely obliterated and was a desire to get out of the dilemma that the United States was brought into by Israel. Israel, before this war, said that we are able to accomplish the mission without the United States. And when the war started, they invited the United States and said that they cannot neutralize the nuclear program by themselves. President Trump and the US intervention, which was part of a unique military operation, it depleted the bigger part of cluster of the GBU 57 bombs, because these munitions specifically produced to deal with the similar targets are not enough, and the United States needs this kind of ammunitions and bombs for other battles. So the United States want now to break out of this dilemma, and the only way to get out of this is stressing the complete destruction of the nuclear project and denying moving the reserve of highly enriched uranium.
Right, but I have to ask you here, Mr. Sultan, about the contradiction in reports made by the US and or vis-a-vis those made by the Europeans, and what do you have on that?
I think because both reports are produced very quickly, the risk assessment are not over. Is not over when Donald Trump claimed neutralizing the nuclear program, and the Europeans also do not have enough information. Even the Iranians themselves do not have enough information for a final assessment. They are still counting the damages in Fordo, and if the bombs really were able to destroy the vital facilities in Fordo or not. So the final assessment is not out there yet. The European wanted to practice pressure, and the Trump administration wanted to conclude a deal quickly. They want to sit on the negotiation table for a political solution. Trump was engaged in this operation because he is aware that the United States cannot handle a long-term war with Iran. They have other priorities and geostrategic conflict with China, and they have Russia to deal with. Being engaged inside Iran militarily will reflect negatively on the United States and will serve its opponents, especially China at the moment, and then China. So there are the real contradictions in the reports because there is no sufficient information yet. And what has been claimed by Trump that there are intelligence workers who visited the nuclear sites was some kind of a propaganda. And what is being claimed by Europe is a well to inspect the other nuclear sites, and if there are confidential classified sites in Iran or not. It's a very complex geopolitical situation, and the desires of each party contradict and they do not meet in a certain point. This dilemma can be only resolved with a political solution.
Right.
The war will be a major catastrophe in the entire region and will reflect on the United States and on Europe. In fact, there is a clear bias from the IAEA, and this bias is backed by several states. But eventually, this cannot go longer, and this fragile truce might actually lead to resumption of
Right.
operations once again. Definitely, the regional status cannot hold longer.
Right, Mr. Sultan, that was Mr. Ahmed Sultan and Miss Ginger Chapman. And thank you so much, both of you, for your valuable, very valuable insights.